Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. World leaders have convened in Munich for a pivotal three-day security conference where pressing global issues are taking centre stage. Among the key discussions are the future of Ukraine, potential deployment of international peacekeeping forces there, and strategies to secure Europe's borders against mass illegal migration. With so much at stake, what major developments can we anticipate from these high-level talks? Well, joining us to break it all down is Jacek Raubo. He's a director at Defence24 Analysis Unit and a regular contributor. Jacek, welcome back to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
A pleasure as always. Now, it's been going for 2 days, the conference. Main takeaways for you?
Truly, I think it's a forward deployment of different ideas by the new administration from the United States, but also by European states and also other actors from different dimensions, not only from the political side, but also from generally this surrounding environment. So I think I'm not the optimist, I'm not the pessimist after that, because I think we are living in very turbulent time. And we need to be right now very patient with any forms of easy solutions for instance, solving some conflicts. So I think the Trump administration presented this very strictly how they want to achieve their own goals. I think Europe is also ready to answer for that. There is a strong voice coming from outside. I think the role of the powers from not transatlantic area are really important in this context, because we have had during not only the Munich Security Conference, but also this AI conference before that, for instance, India are playing a very crucial role in the context of building this peace agreements and new dimensions when we think about emerging and disruptive technologies. So very comprehensive, very sophisticated situation with no one easy solution to solve all of the challenges and problems.
Well, certainly there aren't. I'd like to focus on the challenge, of course, of Ukraine to start with. Quite an interesting quotation from the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Sybiha, who said that he was actually feeling more optimistic today than he was when he arrived at the conference. Why do you think that is?
Because, as I mentioned before, we are only touching a visible side of negotiations. That's why there is a lot of emotions in our debates when we are trying to cover something which is happening with a large space of this unknown for us spaces based on the diplomatic relation, bilateral and multilateral. There is some other chats and discussions in the context of this Munich Security Conference. That's why I think Ukraine is much more optimistic aftermath, because they were coming to some conference where we saw this enormous emotional approaches dedicated to describing this situation we are dealing with. So I think aftermath, there is a space for the negotiators, there is a space for diplomats, and still there is a space for a strong message coming from various sides, not only from the United States and Russia, to deal with this peace negotiations. But one more thing I need to emphasize here in this context. I'm not so sure that we are touching peace negotiations. I think we are touching much more stopping this full-scale warfare in Ukraine right now. So one short remark dedicated to this.
Well, quite. And of course, the question then arises, or the concern arises, that how sustainable would such a ceasefire be, and would Putin simply just use it to rebuild his resources? Now, tell me, clearly, the European Union has been challenged on a number of fronts by the US delegation. Is Europe going to rise to that challenge? Are they going to bulk up their defence industry? Are they going to develop a comprehensive defence strategy in response?
we have no chance to save this level of investments in the context of security and defense issues, because United States is signalizing, that they will check everything. They will be much more focused on this strengthening the pillar coming from Europe in the context of the whole NATO functioning. So we are not able to continue something which is a kind of a peace dividend from the end of the Cold War. That's our time. I hope that the decision makers will be very active. The other decision-making structures will have this opportunity after the decision from the political level to enlarge, for instance, investments in military, in building new capabilities, in, for instance, modernizing our armed forces in Europe. So we are not in the very comfortable situation, as you mentioned before. U.S. is putting pressure, but on the other hand, Russia will use this pressure against Europe, against European nation, even with frozen conflict in Ukraine. So we need to do it very fast, and the synergy between different European states is necessary right now, because we need to not only based on United States as a best guarantee for the stabilization. Secretary Hegseth, Vice President Vance, they told that very strictly. They told that during the different visits. We talk right now about the Munich Security Conference, but on the other hand, there was a very important, we saw this in Poland, a very important visit of Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. And I think this is the synergy of voices coming from United States. But on the other hand, there is a strong message from outside. There is a strong message also from Russia. We need to do it, and we are able to do it. I'm very optimistic in the context of European actions toward different threats, not only coming from Russia.
Understood. Now, you mentioned Secretary Hegseth's visit to Poland. About 20,000 U.S. troops already stationed in Poland, and Secretary Hegseth says that he anticipates having even more U.S. troops transferred to Poland. Now, that's something that seems to be, on the surface, out of alignment with the US's decision to kind of keep US troops out of EU affairs. How do you read that situation?
I think a situation within the Pacific is starting on the eastern flank. So that's why US cannot abandon fully eastern flank. They need to be here. I think we are approaching situation where U.S. commanding structures need to, of course, redefine their deployments around the world in the context mostly of Chinese policy in this rivalry with United States. But still, eastern flank, where U.S. put a lot of resources here, is very important for them in the long term. Because right now we are talking in the context of 3-year presidency of Donald Trump. But on the other hand, we need to remember that some of the investments been built on the pillars created by the former Congress, but not only by the former administration of Joe Biden. It was based on the first administration of Donald Trump. That's why I'm sure that the U.S. will try not only to save some levels of their presence here in the context of manpower, but also in the context of infrastructure, like in Povits, like with APS too, structure which is highly important for American readiness, not only in Poland, but also in the whole picture of Eastern flank. But on the other hand, we need to also accept that United States will invest more in deterring China and Indo-Pac. This is very obvious for them. Regard to the Chinese strength, they need to do it. And I think this is the time to strengthen also the posture of European states here on the Eastern flank. I hope that we will see more troops from the various European states coming to Poland, train alongside the Polish troops, alongside the Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians. We will see better plans and better doctrinal approach to deterring on the eastern flank. Not by eroding American presence, but also adding some European values and European numbers in the context of strengthening our presence here.
Interesting indeed. That would seem to make sense, Jacek. Now, bearing all of that in mind, does it surprise you that General Kellogg has said that there's no seat on the negotiating table for the EU? I mean, you know, there is a military component that the EU is being asked to deliver. Surely they also deserve a seat at the negotiating table, don't they?
I suppose we need to be very careful with any statements which are coming right now directly to the public sphere. Why? Because a lot of things are inside this negotiations covered by the typical tools of information domain, where you are only leaking something which is strengthening your posture or only putting pressure on somebody else. So I'm very careful with any hypothesis about the role of European Union in the context of the future peace negotiations, but also in the future structure of, for instance, military presence as a peacekeeping operation in Ukraine. So we need to be very careful. We need to wait. And I think this is the time for the deployments, for some cover also operations from the various states to build their own agenda in the context of this holistic picture of resolving this conflict in Ukraine.
Understood. Well, of course, we shall be watching carefully as to how that turns out. Now, someone sitting in Beijing, Xi Jinping, is, I'm sure, watching everything very, very closely. What do you think he's thinking?
I think not only him, mostly it is dedicated to their analysts, highly skilled and professionals in intelligence services, but also in some think tanks where we are having this people to strengthen Chinese posture. And I think China is in a very uncomfortable situation right now. Why? Because U.S. is signalizing that they want to abandon this former policy toward China to avoiding this full spectrum of rivalry with them. So we are coming back to the situation when the United States will put the pressure on China on the economic field, military field, and also ideological field. This is a very important statement coming from, for instance, a J.D. Vance statements during his visits in France and in Germany. So United States, they are trying to be much more assertive in the context of China. But on the other hand, for Xi Jinping and his administration, it is also the time for opportunities in the context of investments in their propaganda toward Europe, toward European zone, to enlarge, for instance, some spaces, conflict spaces between U.S. and European partners. But I'm thinking that this is not the very comfortable environment for China right now, when you have a very strong leadership in the United States dedicated to strengthening deterrence and defense policy in Indo-Pacific.
Understood. Jacek Raubo, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.